Well, hello, friends. I'd like to tell you about a new webinar at Astrology University called The House of Big Questions, and it's an exploration of the ninth house, as you might have guessed, with Jessica Murray. And I have Jessica Murray with us today to tell us a little bit about the webinar. Hey, Jessica, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Tony. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So can you tell folks a little bit about what kind of material you're going to share in this webinar?
Well, I always like to start with the kind of the cliches, start with the traditional meanings and the ones that have become things that you think of in any symbol in astrology. You start with them, and then you drill down and you ask yourself, why did those meanings come about? Some of them are obviously still valid. The ninth house can really mean long distance journeys and advanced education and so on. But when we look in detail at how those meanings came to be, we really get something out of it, which explains what transits to that house are trying to teach you that might not be so literal or even event related at all. So I'm going to look in this webinar at contrasting the ninth house, for example, with the third, its opposite, which is its counterpart in the personal half of the wheel of houses. And you get a lot out of it when you do that kind of contrasting with pairs of houses. And I'm also going to go through the significance of the angular succedent cadent houses, the threefold way of breaking down a quadrant. So with a little bit of technical stuff in there to show, again, how these meanings arose out of the structure of the house system. I'm also going to look at each of the planets as they, how they are modulated when they go through the ninth house, and also natal nativities, which is, if you were born with a lunar planet in the ninth house, how that operates in terms of the meaning of the planet, the meaning of the sign.
Beautiful. Will you be going, just because people are always asking, just to set up expectations, you mentioned the planets in the ninth house. Will you be going through a little example of each one, or will you just cover a couple of them?
I'm going to cover all of them somewhere or other, maybe not in order.
Yeah.
But throughout the webinar, we'll be talking about each of the 10 major planets in the ninth house. And also
Great,
by
people will love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were saying, and also,
well, I'm going to be considering also groups of planets in the ninth house, like a fire planet in the ninth house would behave differently, be modified differently than a water planet, and so on. But each of the 10 planets will be mentioned.
Great. And how about signs? Will you be looking at all of the signs or just a few examples of the signs?
Probably just a few.
Great.
Probably I'll generalize, a watery type of a sign in that house versus something else. But they have meaning beyond just the specificity. As we know, you can't really tell much from these isolated elements. So you want to teach the generalizations that will help people apply these ideas to whatever chart they're looking at.
That's right. Well, this is also a great, it's going to be a great webinar as well from the perspective of we don't have often a psychological approach to the houses, and you'll be really, right. It sounds like you'll be really drawing that out through like asking like why, right. and what might the person be learning in these kinds of questions.
Yeah, that's a good point, which is, I talk a little bit about why it is that houses are the most likely sub-cycle of astrology to be literalized, to be taken as if they only mean these specific life scenarios. Whereas with the planets and with the signs, at least in modern astrology, we've gotten more into understanding them as symbols, as symbolic of psychological and psychospiritual conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's kind of a no-brainer to think about, like, if we think, money, like the second house has to do with right. money, as if there's nothing psychological that we associate with our approach to money.
Right.
Yeah. It's like there's definitely a psychological component there that's just full of material to mine.
Yeah, now that you mention it, that one really needs a webinar, because
Yes,
that's gotta be the most loaded and charged of houses, at least for a society like ours. But if we lived, in a different society, like an island culture or any other culture, in previous centuries, it might be cowrie shells, right? Or spice that was the most valued resource, and we would still have second house lessons brought to bear.
that's right. That's right. Well, I look forward to the webinar, The House of Big Questions. If you are watching this video before the webinar, you can find the sign up link at astrologyuniversity.com/events and just scroll down and look for the House of Big Questions. And if you're watching this video after we've already presented it, you can get the webinar for instant download. Just head over to the search field at astrologyuniversity.com on any page of the website and type in either Jessica's name, Jessica Murray, or you can type in the House of Big Questions and it should just pop up. If you have any trouble finding it, just email our help team at help@astrologyuniversity.com and they'd be happy to help you out. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jessica. I can't wait for the webinar.
Thank you, Tony. See you then.
All right, take care.